Hello and welcome. Now, whilst the word hero these days is probably thrown around way too carelessly, especially in only round 3 of the season, there's one bloke for Carlton that's been damn good this season and doesn't get the praise he deserves. Today we're going to shed some light on this individual. To quantify how good he's been and how good he was against GWS, here's a stat. Toby Greene was 8 goals 6 in his first 2 weeks of football. He kicked 1 straight on the weekend and had 5 touches. Now, who was the pest that gave him absolutely nothing on Saturday? Nic Newman. This guy frustrated the hell out of Toby Greene and gave him absolutely nothing. So much so, I sort of forgot Toby Greene, for all his ability to impact the game, even existed. Toby Greene probably well and truly knew this, because on numerous occasions he would push higher up the ground, whether that was presenting as a marking option or at stoppages, just to even get a sniff. But even that Nic Newman wasn't buying. I love this example where he diverts the ball away from Toby, even though he sent himself into the middle of the ground. Huge one-on-one win. But you'll also see what happens when he sags off Toby Greene and lets him get that footy in the middle. He becomes the spare in the back line, and we know Nic Newman's far more useful in the back 50, where he can use his kicking from the back of the stoppage to relieve pressure and be a weapon in any 50-50. On this occasion, he holds a firm tackle on Josh Kelly and wins possession back for the Blues. Toby Greene had no impact and will continue to have no impact winning it as a forward high up the ground, and Nic Newman had an impact in the back 50. Simple. Let's delve into how Nic Newman treated Toby Greene. So what Newman would do is he would establish front position, but not the kind where he was glued. He'd basically try to shadow Toby's leading patterns and obstruct any run and jump at the footy. Sometimes a simple diagonal run by Toby Greene would stifle Nic Newman's influence, but that run would be towards a marking contest where he'd either not go up for the mark or he would get spoilt if he did. For the most part though, it was a very successful strategy. You'll be able to see a couple examples on screen here. Now, the delivery into the forward 50 for both teams, let alone the Giants, was a straight up atrocity, full stop. But not letting Toby get a run and jump at the footy was genius because at times it felt like he felt lost, possessing really no other option, or he didn't make himself noticeable for the kicker to identify his lead, simply because he wasn't leading or was scared to do so. I want to use this third quarter example here. Riccardi's taken the mark at high half forward. Now, with the way Newey was treating Toby, Greene was less inclined to make a lead into a more centralized spot here, because Newman's gonna block that one off. If you kick there, you risk the kick getting chopped off. And so you've forced the across the body kick, which is pretty difficult to do as is, let alone when Newman is channeling Toby into the smallest of spaces in the pocket. Riccardi's also wheeled around on the right side, and when Toby's running away from the side that favours that turn, especially for a key forward, it's going to be a difficult kick to execute. And so he butchers the kick trying to find it. This one at the end of the second quarter is absolutely hilarious. I mean, how this isn't a holding free, I will never know, but you get the idea of how much of a pest Nic Newman was in this game. Like, he's not even letting Toby Greene run. If the guy can't run, I mean, what hope is there? This last quarter example I love because the fact that Newey isn't giving Toby any space compels him to give a high fend, probably out of frustration or clumsiness. Regardless, being physical with Toby probably promotes the same behaviour, and there's bound to be a slip up at some point. This last quarter example is good too. I mean, for players like Toby Greene, you can't always be the standalone player to deal with him. So the support by others in this game made Newman's task much more manageable and probably allowed him to thrive better with the assignment. But look, if there's any time to use Dwayne Russell's pounced on him like a cat phrase, this is probably the time. Because Newey is well aware that it's about damage control the minute Toby falls to the ground, and makes sure the handball is absolutely the only thing he's doing in this sequence. There were other times where Nic Newman basically would grab his jumper and play a bit tighter on him one kick ahead of the football, or he'd give him front spot, but that was a little bit less frequent. There were moments where Toby got off the leash in the forward line, and that's where his impact was most felt, getting involved in goals a couple of times. But on a day where 5 disposals and a goal are the main extractions, the only words you can say are every defender makes a couple of mistakes and then call it a day. This guy probably was one of Carlton's best for being amazing with that matchup alone, but he was also impressive in less flashy ways, and this stuff is the kind of thing you see on a week-by-week basis with Nic Newman. Newman earns a lot of cheap kicks that you could describe as stat padding, and with plenty of kick-ins, that's a very easy conclusion to draw. But the way in which he gets his kicks is pretty intriguing. He always peels around the back of the stationary ball carrier looking for a handball receive, and if that's not given, he'll plant himself 15 meters laterally and present as an option. What this does is basically buys the team more time. I mean, in a situation like this, GWS have already set up, so that extra kick gives it to a more certified ball user, number one, and number two, gives more time for another lead to present itself. Sometimes the lateral run is towards the open side of the ground, so this enables a switch. Or in a game like this, especially where the game wasn't decided by a large margin, time management also had a role to play, and the kick mark allowed this to be maximised. The good thing about Newey manufacturing his own space and getting the ball in the back half means he can use his kicking to pick off targets, whether that may be close or far away, with accuracy because he's on the last line. Ahead of him is basically every player the majority of the time, so he can survey his options, anticipate a potential chain to goal, or keep things simple if that doesn't present itself. Good kickers look like good kickers when they're able to bite off a difficult kick. And with an array of options looking forward, Newey can do what he's good at. If we talk about the kicking itself, nothing was flashy in this game, but his positioning in open play did show a common trend. He sits on the back of stoppage, and this works for a number of reasons. He can get a fair bit of distance onto his kick because he, generally speaking, gets a good connection, and sitting him on the back of the stoppage where there's little chance of the Giants loading up with regards to numbers, it allows pressure to be relieved much easier. Less pressure on the kicker we know can lead to good results, especially with a player of Newey's caliber. Then we talk about the little things. Newey just seemed very calm and composed. Sometimes a little sidestep would do wonders in breaking clear of trouble. His vision with this sweeping hand pass was nice, and he read the ball in the air quite well off a number of Giants kicks that were butchered. He also did the underrated thing defenders don't get appreciated enough for, and that is knowing when to hold the play up and just accept a ball up. And his pressure tackling wise, or in one-on-ones, aside from those involving Toby Greene, were also exceptional. Didn't give his opponents an inch. All season long and even last season, there's been noticeable improvement in eradicating those errors he made in seasons gone by. To the point where losing Nic Newman for the final month last season was definitely a bigger loss than I think a lot of people anticipated. With all that said, Nic Newman was one of our best performers on Saturday. Unsung hero? Yeah, I'd give him that title because I sure as hell know that if we had Lockie Plowman on Toby Greene instead, 1 goal and 5 touches is definitely not Toby Greene's stat line. And a 10-point win is probably not a 10-point win anymore. Give this guy the credit he deserves. And here's to more great performances where his sizable impact changes the complexion of the game. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back for an analysis of the Good Friday match. We'll see you soon. Have a good day. Bye for now.